All right, everyone, we start off today predictably talking about Kevin McCarthy and Mattgaetz and Hakeem Jeffries and Mikerogers. There was a lot of drama the other day in the House speakership voting. McCarthy has finally become the Speaker of the House. It took an unheralded 15 ballots for this to happen. Even failing on the first ballot was the first time in literally a century that had happened, showing the discontent, I think, with an element of the GOP and a lot of independents that vote GOP at this point with the uniparty system. That's number one. So he has become House Speaker. There really wasn't, towards the end, there wasn't anyone else that was standing that was viable. Byron Johnson had said, I don't want it. He had reverted back to supporting McCarthy. He had on the first two ballots, then he abandoned him for a while. On day three, he said, okay, well, enough is enough. I'm clearly not going to get the position. Jim Jordan, he had done the same, had held out for a while, but ultimately, told people on day one. By the end of that, he's like, okay, guys, let's get down to business here. Joe Biggs was never really conceivably viable. I like that Mattgaetz put forth Donald Trump as a potential House Speaker, although, number one, he wouldn't have taken the job, I think, seriously. That'd be strange. And number two, based on Donald Trump's particular personality, I can't see him being a good Speaker of the House. I think better in an executive position. I hope that he gets another one in 2024, but I don't think he would have made a good House Speaker. He's just not good at the wheeling and dealing strategery, as W would put it, behind the scenes, sort of the closed-door negotiations that unfortunately do have to happen if you're in that position. So McCarthy has clinched very, very narrowly. There were still some holdouts, including Mattgaetz. We'll get into that in a moment. First, though, there's some astroturfing going on. Well, first I should probably mention Kevin McCarthy finally becoming Speaker. Some people are like, oh no, the Patriots have caved. The patriotic Republicans cucked. They did get him to agree to a list of concessions that effectively weaken his House speakership. So, for example, a single individual now is capable of calling for him to lose his position. Recently, I think the Democrats had changed the rules to make it so that you had to have 5 people to do that. Now it's only 1. So if Mattgaetz is having a pissy day, he can say, hey, I think that today's business should be that we hold a vote on removing the Speaker of the House. If McCarthy does his job and he's willing to negotiate within the party, this won't be a problem, which is why he probably agreed to that. He's like, okay, come on, let's get down to partisan business. Let's make lots and lots of money off the backs of the U.S. taxpayer. Just, I promise to be good. That's basically what we're going with here. He did agree to the concessions, though, that were put forward by these individuals that in some cases were demanded by their constituents. Even if it took him a while to get to that point, at the very least he did make those agreements. So now we go forth hoping that he does his job. We will trust but verify with regards to Kevin McCarthy's speakership. Then you've got Hakeem Jeffries. Of course, he's the Democrat that was standing for Speaker, giving his soaring Obama-esque speech. Right now, go take a casual stroll across Twitter and see if this doesn't comport to something that I and others pointed out years ago. Joe Biden is probably not actually going to seek a second term. He's supposedly lining up to do so. The Democrats don't really want him to run, but they don't really have a replacement for Joe Biden. In comes Hakeem Jeffries, capable of delivering a coherent speech. What happened with Obama many, many years ago? He was a one-term goddamn state senator. He barely had any role in politics, had mainly been just a citizen activist in the loose sense, of course, for a long time, and suddenly he got nominated. Despite literally not having as many delegates as Hillary Clinton at the time, technically, she was screwed and bamboozled. Trump was fond of pointing this out during the 2016 election. They're trying to make Hakeem Jeffries their next dark horse candidate. They're going to carefully groom him to try to get him to run in 2024, and they're going to hope that Biden keels or doesn't run. If they have to primary him, they'll probably try to use Hakeem Jeffries to do so, simply based on his ability to be reasonably coherent. That's the standard in politics. You've got the right letter after your name, you're capable of pronouncing your name, So you're not John Fetterman or Joe Biden. That's apparently very important to a lot of voters. So you get someone who's reasonably young, relatively politically untested, and you put them in as a dark horse candidate. That is clearly what they're doing. There is an AstroTurf going on right now. It's a foreshock. This happened with Obama. He gives a keynote speech. He happens to be coherent, relatively young at the time, and at least in the partisan sense, likable, capable of negotiating and rapprochement because he's got that legislative experience. And then you put him against some unipartyist who's 30 years older. No shit, he tends to win, even though he technically didn't win except among delegates that fled from Hillary Clinton. The party clearly does not like her either. I don't think that they like Biden either. They see him as dead weight. So that's the Hakeem Jeffries AstroTurf. Third, link in the description. You can watch this for yourself. Mattgaetz, I think this was ballot 14, not ballot 15, this particular clip, held out. He delayed his own vote so that he would effectively be the last person voting. And then he says present. So he's like, I'm not going to oppose McCarthy directly, but I'm not going to justify you with my vote. Now, McCarthy wanders up from the stage to go and confront Mattgaetz. And they have words. We're not exactly sure what was said. There wasn't a mic on them. Then Mikerogers comes in from the aisle, actually. He's a McCarthy ally. And it looked like he wanted to fight Mattgaetz. He starts trying to lunge through the aisle. Now, it got to the point where the clerk had to say, be civil. Please do not fight on the House floor. Well, it would be a breach of decorum in this very stalwart hall of democracy and liberty. It would be beyond the pay. If you want to go snort coke or something, that's perfectly fine. Everyone's got a bottle underneath their chair anyway. That's okay. Please don't swing at each other, though, says the clerk. McCarthy, he's wandering down, and then his ally there lunges for Mattgaetz, has to be physically restrained, and then McCarthy wanders back up. It looks like he's got shell shock, too. McCarthy, of course, not getting aggressive. He's just hot under the collar. One of his allies felt very incensed that Mattgaetz would vote his conscience. By the way, isn't this basically insurrection? I've been told that any time within D.C. where there's any sort of bad words, shit-flinging, somebody moves towards another person in a mildly aggressive manner, it's an insurrection. That seems to be the standard. By the way, Ashley Babbitt's mother getting arrested the other day for jaywalking while protesting the fact that her daughter had been murdered by the D.C. cop there. There's nothing to see here, citizen. Again, move on. So shouldn't Mikerogers be kicked out of Congress for this? They should just kick him out and say, well, we can't have people that are getting aggressive on the House floor. They won't because he's a unipartyist, but it was interesting to see anyway. There's the sum and substance of it. McCarthy is Speaker. We hope that he does his job. That's all he has to do. All he has to do is acquiesce to a handful of basic demands from a significant chunk of House Republicans that want certain things like investigating the Twitter files. That should be practically order number one because of the First Amendment issue. And a few other things, investigating the FBI's role in attacking citizens' free speech and privacy. Potentially amending 230. That would be an important one. Trump has already given you the blueprint for that, by the way. His blueprint was basically perfect. This is what Mattgaetz, Lauren Boebert, a few others have been pushing for. That and looking into the J6 committee's proceedings, investigating the investigators, so to speak. I believe that McCarthy is probably likely to start out with more basic work. And that's fine for a little while, but at some point you do need to look into the erosion of the U.S. Constitution under the current stewardship of Beijing Biden. Otherwise, he'll probably lose his position because one of the concessions that he gave to them was, hey, we're going to go back to the old pre-Dem House rules, by the way, which allows a single member to demand a vote to potentially remove the Speaker of the House. Of course, the unipartyists will fall in line. The idea that they're going to vote to remove is remote. It'd be funny if you ended up with a handful of MAGA Republicans voting with the straight-laced Democrat crowd to remove the Speaker of the House, and then they end up with a MAGA Speaker or something like that. That'd be awfully funny now, wouldn't it? Unlikely to happen, but we'll see. I have a feeling there are going to be some House floor fireworks. For the first time in a long time, C-SPAN proceedings might not be so boring. So it's a win-win, I suppose. There's at least the possibility that things in that particular chamber improve, even if only marginally. That's about all. Peace out.